So the first is a declaration of interest. If you have any pecuniary interests in anything that's on the agenda, you can declare it now or at any time during the meeting. The next is the adoption of the agenda. Could I have someone move the adoption of the agenda? Okay, Mary Lou seconded. Dina, all those in favor? Carried. We then have the minutes from the last meeting. Anyone have any comments concerning the minutes? Anything? Okay. Could I have someone move the meeting?
Could
Oh,
we just
Janet,
make
wait,
I'm sorry.
there was an amendment?
Yes, by email that we sent out, so I
Yes.
just want to make sure that that is
Yeah.
accounted for as amended.
So the minutes as amended. Do I have someone to move that, please? Okay, Janet, seconded by, I saw Mary Lou hand. All in favor? Carried. And I will try and remember you folks up in the, up on the screen there. So, hi. All right. Our next thing is a presentation from a former board member, Roxanne Darling. And Roxanne's no stranger to the Conservation Authority or to the community in around the Perth area. So I'm going to let Roxanne take it over. And as Alex gets everything set up for her.
So pick up your voice so everybody can hear you.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces again, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of, I know it's a pretty compact meeting agenda today to allow me to introduce a little bit more about Genoway-Duganuck. Genoway-Duganuck and what Genoway-Duganuck is all about. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Roxanne Darling. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for Genoway-Duganuck Village, and I am a proud member of the Bay of Quinte Mohawk Nation. I served as a municipal councillor for 20 years and was honored to be on the MVCA board for the term from 2018 to 22. My journey to publicly embrace my heritage began in this very room during our September 2021 meeting when Jeff Atkinson opening statement changed my life and gave me a safe place to acknowledge my heritage and gave me hope for the future generations. I marked that day as the day I came out of my teepee and I haven't gone back in. Joining me today virtually are some of our senior staff, board members, and elders. I'm not quite sure. I sent the meeting invite out to everybody, so I know a few of them are there, and I can feel their presence. We typically open every gathering with a prayer of thanks from one of our elders. We do this to give thanks to the Creator for the blessings of the day, but today I would like to ask Jeff if you'd please do me the honor to read your September 21st statement again.
I'd be honored to, Roxanne. Again, this was the land acknowledgement that we used to open our meeting in September of 2021, which was ahead of the first National Day of Reconciliation holiday that year. And yeah, I started. That September 30th marks our country's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, a day to remember, to learn, and to work for change. As the descendant of people who settled and prospered on the lands of many First Nations, I, like so many others, was raised without knowing the history of the land and the people who cared for it since the beginning. My own path towards learning that history and the truth of my people's relationship with that land and the people displaced remains and the people we displaced remains long. But I commit to making that journey, and I know that I will not be alone. In that spirit, I want to respectfully acknowledge that the Board of the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority meets on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people and is charged by the Crown with the conservation of its watersheds, of the Mississippi and Carp rivers, both of which flow through that land, as well as the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat and the Mississauga-Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care and teachings about our earth and our relations. As we move together along the path of reconciliation, may we relearn and once again honor those teachings and bring them into the work that we do here. As we meet today, I reflect on the meaning behind our new National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I observe that voices are missing from our table. that lands of cultural significance are not included among the lands we are charged to protect and conserve by the Crown, that vital and traditional species have and continue to be put at risk by the work that we do, and that waterways named to recognize the first people who lived on them at the time of settlement still do not bear their true names. We have much work to do. Thank you and miigwech.
Thank you. I promised Sally I would talk fast, so go on with the slides. Okay, slide one, Genoway-Duganuk Village, which by the way means we all are connected, whether it be the people around the table, the roots, the sky, the birds, the fish, and the trees. Building partnerships, embracing heritage, and leading the way in truth and reconciliation. Okay, now I need to go forward now. Okay, so it's not my fault. Oh, there we go. Just got to hit it a little harder. Grandfather Williams' vision. This project is dedicated to globally renowned Algonquin elder and visionary leader, Grandfather Williams Commanda. His simple but compelling message of forgiveness, reconciliation, and enlightenment is the foundation on which Genoway-Duganuk is grounded. His respect for Mother Earth, racial harmony, social justice, Indigenous knowledge keeping, and peace is at our heart. There we go. Good for you. Thanks. What we have accomplished, we've been established for 2 years, and we've accomplished some really great things in our first 2 years. We've established governance, hired core employees, and created HR policies, developed strategic operational and fundraising plans, created marketing tools, including website, media campaigns, and securing agricultural drawings from the internationally renowned Blackfoot architect Douglas Cardinal, who also designed the Museum of History in Ottawa. We've established advisory circles with 24 of the most spectacular volunteers you ever want to have in an organization. Developed training curriculum for Indigenous tourism and green building, and secured grant funding to support our various initiatives. Building partnerships, building community. Genoway-Duganuk, we are all connected is what we are all about. MVCA is committed to honoring the intent of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action and building respectful, reciprocal relationships with the interested Indigenous communities and our groups in the watershed. Genoway-Duganuk is also committed to this initiative. We want to plant seeds for the next 7 generations. How does GV align with the strategic goals and Indigenous engagement plan of the MVCA? We align perfectly with these plans. Genoway Village aligns seamlessly with MVCA's commitment to truth and reconciliation, promoting respectful, reciprocal relationships with Indigenous groups in the watershed. Together, we can lead the way in Indigenous engagement, responding to Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action by fostering meaningful partnerships that honor Indigenous knowledge and stewardship of lands. Genoway-Duganuk offers unique opportunity to set a provincial standard for transformational Indigenous partnership. Our shared experiences in environmental stewardship can enhance the well-being of all within the watershed. By uniting our strengths, Genoway-Duganuk Village and MVCA can build a foundation of cooperation, utilizing our collective knowledge and find benefits of the land, water, and community we serve. This is Elder John Henry. As we open our meetings and our gatherings with a prayer of thanks, we close them also with some words from our elders, inspiring words always. So I asked John Henry, since he wasn't going to be able to be here, one of our elders, if he would give us a few closing words. And then I've got just a couple more seconds of an ask, and then I'd be open for questions. Okay, Kelly, can you maybe help me? How do I? Control and click? Oops, no.
On YouTube. Roxanne, I've pulled up I can share it on my screen if you want.
Kelly, does
Yeah,
that
that'd be
make
great.
sense? Karen, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Slide.
Yes, well, just I think the end here, yeah.
Okay, we're ready for your share.
Okay.
Ani, bonjour, hello. My name is John Henry Commanda. I am currently chair of the Dinaway Dagenham project. Ibaka Mahingen in Deshikas, and Ishtabe Begizi Dodem, Tokis Denjaba. Recently, I've been asked to provide my perspective on the word reconciliation. Reconciliation, in my opinion, is a journey to create a path with a specific purpose or goal. This goal is to create a relationship with Indigenous people in Canada. This path will not be an easy path to create, however. But the best part of this journey is knowing that we are trailblazers and we'll be creating this path together. We will watch it grow as more join us along this path. There will, of course, be challenges as we blaze this new path together. Hills that will look like mountains, dips that look like valleys, streams that look like rivers, and potholes that resemble lakes. And if at any time during this journey, anyone feels comfortable or satisfied or walking along this path, we will remind them that they may be on the wrong path, because the trailblazer path is one that will encounter difficulties. Truths will be spoken, realities will be highlighted, mistakes will be made, and yet we will persevere and continue walking along this path to that goal, reconciliation. Many will want to walk with us along this journey to create this beautiful path, but they'll wonder what their role is. And we'll have to remind them. If they want to walk this path with us, do not ask, what can I do? Ask themselves, what am I going to do? Reconciliation begins with each and every one of us here in our hearts. We must be willing to walk this path side by side. We can demonstrate our commitment by conducting actions on our own, not being told what to do. An example would be to participate in the local potluck. attend the smudge ceremony, or even visit one of the local Indigenous organizations in your community. It is my humble opinion that reconciliation requires at least two parties, individuals, groups, organizations, having the will and fortitude to create a relationship of respect, honesty, integrity, and love for one another. We must be willing to learn about each other, understand that we are different, learn to live with these differences, and respect these differences while crafting or creating this new relationship. And ultimately, neither side will be right or wrong when we arrive at a collaborative, consensual decision, as all parties will have demonstrated respect, honesty, integrity through open discussion, negotiation, concessions, and of course, agreements. And finally, let's remind ourselves of the reasons why you have chosen to walk with Indigenous people in Canada. Remind yourselves to follow your heart, and most importantly, be ready for a beautiful but difficult walk and journey with us. In my mind, in my perspective, this is reconciliation. Miigwech.
All right. All right, gets back to you, Roxanne.
I provided, sorry. As you can see, I provided each of you with some further information and a tobacco offering, a gesture of respect, and a request for your support. We hope you can accept it with open hearts and minds. We ask that the MVCA board pass a motion or consider passing a motion directing staff to explore mutually beneficial partnerships with Genoway-Duganuk Village, possibly a subcommittee including staff, board members, and some GV representatives, possibly myself. Together, we can create a legacy of stewardship and reconciliation that will inspire other CAs province-wide for future generations. So I open the floor up for questions if anyone has any, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Roxanne. Questions?
Thank you, Roxanne, for your presentation. This must be a very exciting time for you.
It sure is.
I'll bet it is. So I was wondering if your group is working with any other municipalities or organizations right now.
Other than Mississippi Mills has, and Mayor Lowry has been one of our biggest champions in all of our endeavors. And we are looking for land within the Mississippi Mills Township to establish. As far as other organizations, you're kind of my first, and I thought very appropriate to be my first. We will be doing further presentations to Lanark County and the local municipalities when the time is right. But this just felt like home first, so this is where I came. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Roxanne. The information you gave us here is something we'll take back and review, and we'll bring it forward to another meeting here. So,
Perfect. I
okay.
appreciate that. Thank you so much, folks. You have a wonderful day.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that item will stay with Sally for some follow-up. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is the is the General Manager's Update Report. Has some very interesting stuff in it.
Okay, so I forgot to include one item on this, and so I'll speak to it first, and that is the work that's ongoing with respect to preparation of the land conservation and resource strategy, which is a combination of 2 deliverables due the end of this year. So during the course of the summer, we went out for public consultation. All of your municipalities received it. All of you individually have received the not only the documents, but the questionnaires, surveys that we sent out. We promoted them on social media and in local libraries and in newspapers. And I'm happy to say that we've received over 170 responses to the recreational survey and upwards of 70 responses on the conservation, land conservation strategy. So in my books, having done lots of public consultation, those are pretty good numbers. But one of the key things is I need to hear from you because basically what we're talking about doing is preparing somewhat of a visionary document for the next, say, 20 years for this organization. We're charting the course for where we think this organization needs to go in future, both in terms of programs and services we want to deliver, the lands we want to own, the policies and direction. And actually the presentation that Roxanne just gave to us, you know, is one of the questions we need to be posing to ourselves, which is what role do First Nations have in the work of the authority going forward and vice versa? And how can we collaborate going forward? So I am going to, after this meeting, send out the links to those surveys again, but also I'm just going to share with you a handful of just questions directed to you specifically as board members, because I am now starting, having received all this input from various people. People have been writing in addition to submitting the surveys or completing the surveys, people have taken the time to submit actual responses. And I think it's really important that I hear from you on some of these issues as I'm beginning to draft this document. So anticipate something from me in the next 2 days on that. I'm just finalizing the questions I want to pose to you because your responses will really help to inform the work that I'm doing in drafting this document. So that's something that I should have had in here, but I guess because I'm so immersed in it, somehow I forgot to add it. Okay, some other things I wanted to draw to your attention from this report is that you'll recall in the spring, the province did change our regulations. And so while we put a notice up on our website saying that the new regulations were in effect, it took us some time to actually make the changes on our wetland regulation mapping. So that work has all now been completed to be compliant with the new regulation, and it's been shared with all of your municipalities. So your planning departments and any of their GIS support organizations have all the new regulated limits of for wetlands in our watershed. Another thing I wanted to highlight is number 4, and having to do with our capital program at our conservation areas. I'll start by just expanding a bit on to the weather conditions we had this summer. So in April, we had more than double the rainfall of average. May, 75% over average. June was double again. July was a third greater. August was 50% greater. And to date, in September, being the 9th of September, we've already had 50% of the average rainfall for this month. So it's been an extraordinary year, which has meant that we were operating the system throughout the summer, and that's very unusual. Usually we're able to lock down the system at a certain point in the, late spring, early summer, and it pretty much stays, with modest operations in response to occasional rainfall events. But this summer, we basically operated that system the entire year. And what that has meant is that those same people who normally go and do capital improvements at our conservation areas did not have that leeway that they normally have. So we are a bit behind in our capital program, but they've made up for lost time and continue to make progress. And so we'll see where we land at the end of the year, but it's just been a challenging year in that respect. So I just wanted to give you a heads up because it may have implications later in the year when we're looking at underspending potentially in some of the capital programs that we wanted to achieve at our CAs this year. So Another thing I wanted to highlight was number 8, which is the monitoring system improvements. So a key component of our work as a CA is flood forecasting and warning. And so monitoring the system, making sure that we have as accurate and real-time data as possible is really critical. And so we continue to make improvements on the system this year. So you'll see here that we're bringing gauge stations at Buckshot Lake and Huntley Creek online so we can remotely access them. And we've installed air temperature sensors at Silver Lake and a variety of other improvements across the watershed. So, the nice weather, to the extent we had nice weather this summer, is really important for us to get out there and make those kind of improvements on our monitoring system. As well, we were out there doing bathymetric surveys, particularly at Kashwakamak Lake in anticipation preparation for the detailed design work that's going to follow on the EA that Euro will be speaking to. On the less technical, more fun side of things, I wanted to highlight our agricultural projects. So we've continued to be doing, programs under ALICE. So 3 wetlands have been completed so far this year, and there are several projects that are going to be completed this fall. And similarly, our shoreline planting was very successful this year, and you can see that we have had planned plantings for this fall of over 1,000 trees and shrubs. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight internally is our contract with TRCA. So we currently in our engineering group, we have one person on mat leave and another person is going on mat leave by the end of next month. And so rather than try to replace them on a temporary basis, we have entered into a contract with Toronto Region Conservation Authority, and they're going to help provide technical support on our planning reviews. We'll still do the reviews for our permit applications, but they're going to be able to help us ensure that we meet our regulatory timeline requirements under Bill 109 for ensuring that our response time to your municipalities is met for those planning application reviews. So the last couple of things I wanted to highlight, and again, one of them follows on Roxanne's presentation. You all have been invited to a reconciliation and Thanksgiving harvest event on October 5th, and there's more details attached to the GM update. So by all means, feel free, please, to attend that if you're available. And lastly, I wanted to remind you that La Tournelle is still open, that if any of you are interested, you can go on and check the program and let me know if you'd like to attend, and Kelly can register you. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Sally on what she's presented or was in the overall document that she provided? Yes, Mary Lou.
First question refers to the surveys. Yes, and I admit I haven't submitted mine yet. But I thought I had an extension until the 20th of September. Is that true or not true?
We did give an extension to the municipalities that, sort of like the staff council, because we understood that not all councils would be able to meet before this deadline of last week, right? So, but in addition to that, I am looking for what your individual thoughts are, because this document's going to be coming to you as board members of the MVCA. So there's the opinion of your municipalities as captured by, staff in your organizations. And then there's your thoughts that I need to understand as a board member of this organization. And you may want to emphasize something that your staff at your municipality didn't.
Okay, so I've still got a chance if I promise to be good and do it in the next 2 to 3 days.
But I'm going to send out a reminder to everybody. And as I mentioned, I'm going to, deviate slightly from that formal questionnaire that went out to everybody to questions really asking you your thoughts on some key matters as board members.
Stephen.
Yeah, just a question on the survey. You got results and that's wonderful. But I remember the survey, some of the questions, is it realistic? We're going out, like, should we be opening marinas and things like that? Was there any of that, what I call crazy stuff coming back?
Okay. So generally, no. However, I will say that there is a lot of demand for campsites. And I think that's something we're going to have a conversation about. The number of campgrounds and publicly available campsites in our watershed has remained fairly stagnant over my life. And the population of this region, of course, has more than doubled. So that's something, and that it's not just for the CA to contemplate, but all your municipalities to contemplate, right? This is a watershed-wide study and analysis that we're doing. The question to be answered is, what role does MVCA play going forward in that?
That's interesting. I tried to open a campsite probably 10 years ago, and Rideau Valley Conservation and our friend Terry Davidson made it totally unaffordable, totally not economically able to do it. So there you go.
Okay, anything else? All right, well, thank you, Sally, for that update. Really appreciate that. And our next one is going to be an interesting topic. It's the 2024 Wiki application results and the project, and Yuri's going to present that. No, he's not going to present that.
Sorry, you're not going to speak to the item?
Okay. I think, Sally, you can just give us the Reader's Digest, Cole's notes.
Okay. So the province changed the WECI program from a 1 year at a time program to a 2 years, where you apply not just for the current year, but the subsequent year. We had asked as conservation authorities that it be a 2-year program in the sense that if you obtain the money in year 1, that you're allowed to carry it over to year 2, because often the notification of the project and the duration of the capital project itself is too confined by a 1-year turnaround time. But the new WECI program still confines us to spend the money within 1 year, and it asks us to anticipate the capital projects for year 2. So we put in for funding for studies in year 1 and capital works in year 2. They did not approve our studies for year 1, which means unless we found alternative resources to carry out one or more of those studies, we would not be in a position to carry out the capital works in year 2. Now, as it happens, we put in for 2 studies this year, and they were both assumed to be 50% funded by WECI, and they were both of equivalent value. So what we've done is we've pooled what MVCA had allocated in terms of study money for 2024, and we're carrying out one of the 2 studies. So we're spending the same amount of money, but instead of doing 2 studies, we're only able to do 1. And by doing that study this year, we will be able to use the WECI funding they have approved for next year to actually carry out the works. So it's a really unfortunate situation, the way they've changed the funding model. I have had conversations with other conservation authorities. I have yet to come across somebody who's had this exact situation upon them, where the year 1 funding was not given and the year 2 funding was basically dependent upon completion of the year 1 works. But Euro and I are going to be following up with M&R and pursuing this with them, because it's, as you can imagine, a very difficult situation as we anticipate future years of how we're going to be managing our requests for funding.
Okay, is that all clear? So basically the Ontario government at its best again with some of its funding options to make things confusing. Okay. There was talk, I had talked to Sally about possibly meeting with John Jordan as well, who's the local MPP, about this. And I'm wondering the board, my thoughts were, does the board think that's a good idea or not? Yeah, Mary Lou?
I think it is.
Okay,
Our mayor has been active in several advocacy projects lately, and John Jordan has stepped up every time to help. She's very impressed, and we're very impressed with what he's done so far. So yes, I think if you approach him, he will be willing to help.
okay, because
If
I've
he
had,
can.
I've had one meeting with him already about this about 2 years ago where I was there on this and some municipal stuff. So I just thought it would be an opportunity to maybe go back. So I'm just seeing by the nod of heads around that we'll go ahead and set that up. Okay, and we'll report back to the board. Thank you. The next item is the the Cache Lake Dam Class EA and the preferred alternative reports. And Yuri, you are leading us through that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So really briefly, the Kashwakamak Lake Dam, as you all know, is a multi-year, multi-million-dollar project. MVCA secured funding through the Infrastructure Canada's DMAF program, and this is further supplemented by WICI funding on an annual basis. The project, given its size, is planned and executed in phases. The current phase of the project is the Class EA, Class Environmental Assessment, which follows the Conservation Ontario process for water and erosion control structures. The Class EA, among many other things, identified 5 technical solutions or alternatives for this project. And these are: first, do nothing, obviously. Second alternative is to decommission the existing structure. The third alternative is to try to repair the structure. The fourth is to basically construct a new dam at the same location. And the last, fifth alternative is to construct a new dam at the downstream location, downstream of the existing dam. And as part of the Class EA process, these alternatives were evaluated, considering a number of criteria, such as, the functional aspects, engineering aspects, economic aspects, environmental, cultural, social, and so forth. And the alternative 4, basically construction of a new dam at the same location, so basically replacement of the existing dam, was confirmed to be the preferred technical solution for the project. And in my report, I provided a summary table that lists all these alternatives on one page and kind of provides the pros and cons of each. And you will see that this alternative 4 basically checks all the boxes, right? So this replacement of the dam at the same location will basically will be basically maintaining, but also enhancing, improving existing water management of the lake. The dam will be basically built considering latest existing dam safety guidelines and processes. And furthermore, the dam will be resilient to climate change because we'll be considering climate change in the design in the next phase of the project. So there'll be some additional resiliency and factor of safety for future extra large storm events that we might see in the future. The other aspects of this alternative is that since we will be not changing the water management at all, there will be no changes in water levels in the lake or outflows from the lake. There will be no change in the environment, no impacts on the environment or aquatic habitat. And lastly, since we'll be replacing the dam at the same location, there will be no impacts on public or private properties. So I should also mention that this alternative for replacement of the dam was initially considered in previous studies at MVCA and in initial project planning also in our grant applications, for instance. So it's good to see that at the end, all this effort went into the Class EA and the evaluation process, and we see that it basically confirms and basically is in line with the previous stats, and there is no change in the scope of the project, overall project scope. So that's good to see. So I guess that's in a nutshell my message today, and my recommendation to the board is basically to endorse the alternative for replacement of the dam at the same location as the preferred solution for the project.
Okay, thank you, Yuri. Do you have any questions for Yuri on this? The document's fairly explanatory. It's the Class EA process. Looks like it's been well followed. So seeing no question. Oh, Mary Lou, you have a question.
Yes, you mentioned that it's a multi-phase expensive project. And we've now taken care of phase 2. How dependent in the future are we going to be on provincial funding to build this thing?
So we are receiving 40% of total project costs from the federal, that's the federal funding stream, the EMAF. The WECI can be providing additional 30%, right? So it'll be basically 30% MVCA will have to pay for the project. We've been so far successful. We've been, we just, as Sally said, we received the WECI funding for next year to help us to finance the preliminary and detailed stage of the project, right? So far we have applied twice and we received the funding. So we had a 100% success rate. So, but it's a questionable, what will happen, in the future, right? We are potentially 3, 4, 5 years from the completion of the project.
Okay,
Thank you.
Stephen, you have a question.
Just curious, the cost difference between option 3 and 4.
What is the difference?
Or
Well,
what's
the 3 is repair. So we will be basically repairing the existing structure.
Oh,
So it's and we've looked at it in the past as part of the dam safety review. So the previous studies we did for this structure, and basically the findings it's not very feasible because we're talking about a structure that is 115 years old, and patching up the old concrete is proved to be not very effective. It was done in the past, and we see basically the seepage and erosion. It's just a matter of time, and you need to invest in a new repair. So and then it is the cost, right? So the cost is not cheap. Now we know that the structure deteriorates so much that it will be a very large project, expensive project to fix, repair it. And then it gives you another, the useful, the extend the life of 10 years, and we will be again back to square one. So with the repair, with the replacement, we will be basically building a new dam that will be good to function for many years.
so what's the cost of option 4, the new dam?
Well, the total project cost is around 6 million.
6 million. And that's today's cost, or by the time we're done?
That's today's cost.
Could be 10, and we don't really know what 3 was. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other? Sally?
Euro, do you happen to recall what the cost of option alternative 3 was, ballpark?
The ballpark, I know this was a risk assessment study that we did back in 2000. And at that time, the cost, we did this cost benefit analysis. So we looked at the repair cost versus, the lifespan of the structure. And at that time, the decision was made that it's just, there's no benefit, investing, in the repair. I can't remember exactly the number, Sally, but I know it was maybe maybe half of the cost of the replacement. So really, really high versus, the benefit wasn't really there.
So the net present value analysis, dollars invested for years of life was in favor of alternative 4. So Stephen, though the upfront cost may have been less, the years you get out of the asset would have been significantly less. And then, as Euro said, you still would have had to invest it, potentially the 6 million or whatever it ends up being. So we tend to use net present value analysis as a more fair comparator because you're investing in a different level of service by repairing versus replacing the asset.
Okay, so any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we do have a motion. Resolve that the Board of Directors endorse alternative 4 as identified through the Class EA process as the preferred approach for replacing the Kajawazamak Lake Dam. Do I have someone to move that? Moved by Jeff, seconded by Glenn. All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, our next report is the Summer Nature Camp Program, and Scott, you're giving that?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to take you through a review of how our summer camp program went this year. Thanks to some of our staff, so from monitoring and from our stewardship program and from our engineering program, we were able to get some updated marketing shots for this year. So they're kind of sprinkled amongst the presentation, so it's not just me talking. You'll be able to get some good views of how camp went. So this picture is probably poorly placed by me, but if you ask me how camp went, that picture right there is pretty much how camp went. It gives a real good snapshot of actually how it went, and it as an overall synopsis, it did go very well from our perspective, from the participants' perspective, and from the parents' perspective. But just a little background. So the summer camp program was put on hold after the 2019 version due to COVID-19. And so it would have been last year where it was approved to spend $20,000 to bring the program back to life for this year. So for this year, we were aiming for 32 participants for the 4-week period. So the 4 full weeks in July. Ages 6 to 12 for the kids, we charge $250 a week. So based on having the $20,000 support from the board, we were able to hire a program coordinator. So we brought on Emma Higgins, who was absolutely instrumental in helping redesign this program. It was a big focus on the nature-based curriculum, getting the kids the exposure to the site. So they did a lot of hiking. They were in the river. We were able to kind of give them small kind of how to build fire courses. So there was a lot of exposure to what the site is able to offer. And Emma was, like I said, she was instrumental in helping to design those programs. Very detail oriented. The program shifted each day. So each day there was a different focus in what the kids were going to be doing. As Sally alluded to, there were some weather challenges. So there were a couple of days where some of those big storms rolled through, and we kind of had to kind of flip our plans for that day. But all in all, it was a very smooth program for the kids. So again, so how it went, we sold out with a waiting list. Which from our side was very good. We generated $34,000 in revenue, which helped us to be able to recoup all except $7,000 in the $20,000 that was put forth as the expense. And as I said, it's been extremely positive participant feedback. So we did put out a post-event survey, and parent and participants, so children, feedback was, it was 90% to the positive. So everybody, and we also asked in the questions within that survey of would you come back and would you participate in other programming? And there wasn't a single person from the respondent that said that they weren't interested in either returning to summer camp or additional programming that we might be able to offer. So with that, we've started to take a look ahead at what next year might look like, assuming we'll be able to run the program again. We feel that a target of 50 participants over a 6-week period is not out of reach. I think it's a reasonable goal to shoot for, based on the fact that the previous version of this camp used to run 20 kids for 6 weeks. So we've already exceeded by 50% what the previous edition of the program would have run. So with that, the program would generate upwards of $78,000 in revenue and would be fully cost recoverable based on those numbers. It would also allow us to run a better program from a planning perspective and from a participant perspective. So we found that 80% of our participants fell between the ages of 6 and 9. So what that'll do is the more participants you have, the easier it is to break it up into groups, and then you can tailor your programming to those specific groups. It gets a little harder when you're mixing the 6-year-olds and the 12-year-olds. You're kind of aiming for the middle. But with the higher numbers, it allows you to kind of break up that programming, and hopefully gets, allows for a better experience for those participants. So long term, as we're looking out into the future, there's no real reason why we couldn't run a full 8-week program throughout the summer. It could, we could be looking at 60 participants per week or even more, depending on how much we can grow it in future years and what the site can handle in terms of how many participants would be either within that vicinity of the Milliken Tail site or would be willing to travel to that site. There obviously is going to be a number as to what the interest level is going to hold. But I mean, it wouldn't be out of the question to see 60 participants per week. It could be a major supporter of other Category 3 programs, so it could act as a bit of a subsidy for some of the other programs we're looking to run in the Category 3. It would require some investment into on-site infrastructure, so we would need to look at updating what we have for internet on that site to be able to communicate with the parents a little better. We'd also be looking at probably trying to add either temporary or a more permanent structure in terms of cover to get the kids in case of inclement weather. So, we're tossing around initial ideas of possibly even renting a tent, a larger tent that you can put up to at least add additional cover and shelter for the kids if the weather does kind of go sideways. But again, these are just preliminary plans as we look ahead. So I guess with that, this one, we were able to get the drone. So this captures a little bit of the river play that was going on. So they were going in certain cases, they're hunting for crayfish, they're looking for bugs, and in some cases, they're just having a good time in the water. So we did want to have a good mix of the educational side and on the curriculum side, but also one of the bigger points I tried to get across was we wanted to make it fun. The parents, I mean, in the end, they're the ones that are going to be funding the program, but it's going to be the kids that are pushing to want to come to the program. So the lasting impact we wanted to leave them was, yeah, we did learn something, but it was also a heck of a lot of fun. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments you may have.
Okay, questions? Glenn?
Thanks, Scott, for the presentation, and congrats for the success. 2 parts to my question. How did you promote it? I think it's impressive that you got full sign up with the waiting list. And do you know geographically where the participants were coming from?
So we promoted it through largely through the social media. We're heavily through Facebook on sponsored kind of pushes and sponsored ads. And that got us really close to selling out. And then we kind of went back to, you can look at it as a more old school method where we went around to various community centers, arenas, stuff like that, you know, and we put up posters that were promoting the camp as well, and that kind of pushed us over the finish line. So it was a combination of the new school social media advertising. We also advertised in various local publications. So the community news that comes out in Stittsville, Canada, Carleton Place, and we were in the Hum, and we were in the Lanark Era, I believe, as well. So we tried to touch all of the local community newspapers. So it was a bit of a mix between, like I say, old school and new school. And sorry, going to the second part. Oh, we do have that information captured. We haven't quite dissected all of that yet, but I would say it's a fairly good mixture of the local area, and that's to your point. That's what we're trying to figure out as to how far people are going to be willing to travel to take part in the camp, and that hopefully that'll be part of our future endeavors.
Any other questions? Stephen?
I think that was that's a good thing. Small efforts for big results. Looks like it's ahead, and the kids talk, so the word will travel. I think you'll be good.
Hopefully.
Good luck with that.
Okay, any other questions? Janet?
Yeah, no, I see that we have a resolution to ask us to go forward with 2025. And I don't have a problem with that, other than I think that the plan for 2025 with the costs and the recovery should be presented to the board with the budget, right? Because right now we're being asked to approve something with potentially an expansion, and we're being told that it's cost recovery, but I don't have any numbers to know that. So, you know, I don't have a problem approving it for 2025, but I want to know what the plan is for 2025 eventually. That's all. So thank you.
I'll just comment, and maybe Scott, you can add to this. At the 78,000 that Scott mentioned, it is full cost recovery. So it's at no cost, the detailed numbers, and they'll show up in the budget. So what we're really looking for today is, are you on for us to include it in the budget? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Mary Lou?
Well, two things. First of all, congratulations. I just wanted to note that in terms of Almont, which is the largest population location in Mississippi Mills, there are not very many summer camp opportunities. And you certainly haven't sated the market with this year. There is room to grow. It's interesting, the question about how far somebody would come. You might get to the point where if it's special enough and if it's good enough, you had grandparents importing grandchildren to go to it, and very, very happy parents. But I agree that I would like to see it as part of the budget deliberations. And thank you very much.
Okay. Any others? Okay, might I make a suggestion then that there is a resolution, and then I'll just add to it at the end of it, budget dependent. That would solve that, if I read it out here and see if that would suit. So be it resolved that the Board of Directors authorize renewal of the Summer Nature Camp program at the Mill Kintail for 2025, budget dependent. Okay? Would somebody move that? Stephen moved it. Taylor seconds it. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Our next item is the land inventory update report.
So, as you'll recall, when I tabled the report in March, it was a draft document. It was, mostly complete, but there were some key items that were outstanding that we were needing to track down documents. And Just so you know, that work is ongoing, because every time you find something, it often will beg another question and you're looking for another document. But in any event, we did have success on several points. And so I just wanted to bring you up to speed on those. So the first one was that I discovered, much to my surprise, that we used to have a mandate for portage routes. And that we had extensive grants to develop those portage routes. And so that would explain why we have signage throughout the watershed at portage routes. Who knew? I never found anything that explicitly said that that mandate was ever removed. I think it became a funding constraint in the 90s. That's my impression at this point. But certainly, as I've seen the evolution of the committee structures at the authority, they did evolve over time, and at some point it did fall off. I just haven't figured out exactly when it fell off of a committee mandate. But when you look at our 1970 administrative bylaw and the committees initially struck, portage routes was clearly there. So it dates back right to the beginning. I had no idea. Anyway, so that was an interesting one. So on that note, then, the properties that we acquired from OPG in the township of Palmerston were for portage routes. And so there you go. That answered that question. The Glencairn facility, interestingly enough, found out a bit more about it. It was actually built after the community of Glencairn was already starting to be developed. Therein lies, the history of some of the problems with flooding at Glencairn, that you had facilities built after the subdivision was done and negotiated after the subdivision agreement had been negotiated. So it is a flood control and erosion control facility. The downstream portion of the Carp River that we own was required to allow for that facility to function properly, to adjust the elevations at the outlet to make sure it all met the requirements of the design. So that explained that one. We do not have any residual interests at McLaren's Landing in West Carleton. All the easements were clearly labeled temporary. The language in them was very clearly that it was only for the duration of the project, and all future maintenance and repair of the erosion control structure was the onus of the landowner. So we're striking it from the inventory. I also got further clarification on the Morris Island. It just happens that it came up for renegotiation. This is an agreement that dates back to 1988, and OPG decided recently that it wanted to recraft the terms of that 1988 agreement. So just some interesting things there. It's a trilateral agreement between the city, OPG, and ourselves. And so actually, I just recently put that to bed because we were able to, amongst the three parties, agree on the new terms. And then legal affidavits were found for all of our dam structures, and if I recall correctly, several of our conservation areas. The challenge we have, and that we're going to have to develop a plan around, is that we don't have legal surveys for a lot of these things, or at least not current ones, registered on title, et cetera, that we can depend upon, that says definitively on the ground, we own this. And so we're going to have to come up with a plan for how we want to tackle that going forward. It'll probably be closely aligned to the phasing of works that engineering group is doing at these various structures. So for instance, one of the first ones on the list will be the Lanark Dam, to make sure that we're very clear about it. We're already in the process of doing it for Kashwakamak, but there's still, some hurdles to be addressed there. But all that to say that while we have the documents clearly stating that we own these assets, often they're verbal descriptions as opposed to actual, registered legal surveys of those properties. So lastly, while we undertake monitoring at several properties across the watershed, generally speaking, we don't have a lot of agreements for those. So given that we do longitudinal analysis at these sites, be they, either snow course sites or where we have actual equipment, we need to just make sure absolutely that those easement rights are there so that we can continue to, use those sites going forward. So we are in the process of updating the land inventory report. There's nothing further necessarily that needs to come back to the board. It's a document that needs to be a living document of the organization under the regulation, and we'll continue to update it as new information comes forward. And any really exciting stuff, I'll keep you up to date on. Any questions?
Okay, Janet.
Just for the purposes of being correct, on page 40, it says portions of Carp Creek Riverbed, and it should read Carp River. So I just want to make sure that's in the minutes because we should not be calling it Carp Creek at that point. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I was with Scouts and we went through this a number of years ago and we found out we owned a graveyard and a railroad station. Scouts, and they're going, okay. So haven't got a graveyard or railroad station yet, so you're doing all right. All right, our next report is the financial update year to date, and Stacy, you're going to lead us through that.
So as noted, we're pretty much on track at the end of June, slightly under. There's a little bit of up and down. The major things are some delays on the capital side, which I've identified if you have any specific questions. The one thing that I did not update the projections on was compensation. As previously mentioned, in other areas, we have a significant number of maternity and paternity leaves this year, but we're replacing some of that staffing with consulting, and it's really hard to project how that's going to come out in the wash. Hopefully when I do my next update in November, which will take us through the end of September, I'll have a much better idea. But at this point, I've left the 200K roughly that we're estimating salaries would be down in to offset but any potential consulting costs. There is, given some funding increases on the category 3 and some expense decreases on the category 2. In both of those areas, we're projecting extra money at the end of this year going into those operating reserves, which will be important. As one of the things we discovered this year, we got no student grant funding. We applied for 10 student grants and we didn't get a single one. So I think going forward, if that's not going to be something we count on when we're budgeting, it'll end up being something that comes out of reserves or hopefully some extra funding. You can't tie the student positions to we get the grant because you don't know until after the students generally start is when they usually even announce if you might get the funding. So if we're saying the student positions are necessary to do the work, we can't not have them in there. Was there any particular questions?
Yes, one. It has to do with student funding.
Sorry, I didn't.
Student funding.
Yes.
Did you make any inquiries as to why we got nothing? This isn't unusual. Library systems got nothing around here as well, and they were dependent on funding.
Each area and member of parliament, they're federal, so the member of parliament has some say. They identify what their areas of particular interest or priority for funding the students. And it was not in conservation or education. So, but I have not gone back further. I can try, but I'm assuming that's not the priority of our member of parliament.
Bev?
Thank you. Yeah, that's just what I was going to suggest is let's contact our member of parliament in this area and ask them, because this is a vital service. And I'd be really surprised if he even took an act of interest if he left us out.
Okay, Dean up first.
Going to say, I know I've applied for those grants before. The member of parliament will usually tell you what his choices are for that year because they do change from year to year. Some years they're conservation, some years they're youth. This year was a seniors. They were really focused on helping seniors. So you can find that out before you apply to adjust your application to say what he wants to hear.
Okay, Sally?
I do recall one year, and I can't remember which fiscal it was, but his statement on grants explicitly said he would not be funding municipalities or conservation authorities. So I can't remember what year that was.
Yeah, Bev?
If it was this year, if it was this year, he certainly did fund municipalities this year.
I'm thinking it was 2 or 3 years ago.
All right. Thank you for that and keeping everything on track. It looks fairly straightforward. And I guess the question will be is to Mr. Reed, because it's federal funding you were talking about there. So our next report is also by Stacy Millard, and that's concerning our KPMG, the people who like to talk down to everybody.
Just as people know, our long-term auditor let us know in 2023 that he wasn't going to be continuing, and we had to go out and try and find another audit firm. It was put out to 3 or 4, and we only got 2 responses. We had chosen KPMG, and unfortunately, the year didn't go very well. I don't know if I want to get into too many specifics other than what's outlined in the report. I don't, given the way it went and the post-audit meetings that we had, I'm not seeing that it would improve greatly in dealing with them. So we are recommending that we withdraw the appointment of KPMG for the 2024 audit, and that we go back out again. I've already reached out to multiple municipalities and conservation area authorities to get who they use and recommendations. So I have about 4 currently, and I've already spoken with 2 of them. So.
Okay, any questions on that before I read the motion? Yes, Dina.
Withdrawing for the 2024, the 2025. Okay, the report says 2025. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were withdrawing for the 2025 too, you know, we get rid of 2024. So, Stephen.
The groups you reached out to, they'd be interested in doing it for us?
Yes.
Yeah, my comments are, let's get rid of those pirates as quick as we can. I've been in several groups where we've had them for auditors, and I don't think we've ever sent a gift basket with the check.
Okay, so seeing no other questions.
I have a hand up.
Oh, Kathy has one up here. Okay, Kathy.
Yeah, I actually am super uncomfortable with this and the comments. I mean, we've worked with KPMG on, I think, every single board I've ever been on, school boards, hospital boards, city hall in Ottawa. And, you know, they're a reputable firm. So I'm not too happy about the comments. If we've had some specific problems, fair enough. But as a firm, you can have issues with individual people and not work well with them. But for people just in a public meeting here to be saying, oh, this particular firm is terrible and pirates, that's not appropriate.
Yes, Stephen.
Yes, Kathy, sorry about that, but any opportunity I've had with them, it hasn't worked well. Maybe they're better with bigger organizations.
I think that might be the case, Kathy, that with the large organizations, they seem to work very well. But I know from our municipality and a few other municipalities that are very small, when you're talking small budgets of 3 and 4 million, it doesn't seem to go that well. Anyways, I will read the motion and we can decide. Kathy, you're still not comfortable with where we're at?
Oh, I mean, the vote is the vote, but I'm just saying, like, you know, I think you have to pay attention to the fact you can't, you know, say something about an entire firm in a public way without some kind of repercussion potentially. Not that I'm gonna do anything. I'm just saying, like, you just don't do that, but it could be. But I mean, we've had them come in at City Hall now in Ottawa where we had a different firm before, and they found a lot of problems that were not caught by another firm. So, you know, there's also a different side of that, that maybe they're looking at doing things absolutely the right way as according to, you know, professional standards, and other groups are not. So anyways, fine enough, you know, people can
Okay,
vote.
fair enough. The resolution is resolved that the Board of Directors withdraw appointment of KPMG for the 2024 financial audit. Do I have a mover? Stephen, seconder. Janet, all those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. Our last order of the day is we resolve that the Board of Directors meeting be adjourned. Do I have a mover? Dina, seconded. Stephen, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, enjoy the rest of this nice cold afternoon, folks. Looking forward to some warm weather in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you.